In this lesson, we're going to learn about the Cartesian Coordinate Plane. But before we get started with that, let's talk about something, or let me show you something that is very similar and hopefully relates to it. So here, imagine a compass, and a compass is very similar to our Cartesian Coordinate Plane. So I'm labeling the top one with north, south, east, and west on this side. So what you'll notice, right, it's the same grid. You have this vertical line and you have this horizontal line, and what we know as north and south is like the y-axis, and then west and east are what we know as the x-axis, but we'll continue with that later on. Let's just show you how the globe is actually a large Cartesian coordinate plane. Now here's what the beginnings of the Cartesian coordinate plane, right? So we know this right side here is the x-axis, and that's the horizontal axis. So we just are labeling each side here. So now we have the y-axis at the top, and that's the vertical axis here. So this is the y-axis here, and then the x-axis is here. In the compass, this was north and this was south here, and this was east and west. So that's how they relate to each other. Now let's move a little bit forward towards this one. So we're gonna our starting point is this thing called the origin. So you can repeat that, say origin again, origin, and the coordinate of that is 0, 0, as you mentioned here. So notice I labeled it here, I put a dot there, that's your origin, right? And we called it the origin, and then the coordinate of that is 0, 0. That means that the x value, or the x coordinate, is 0 and the y coordinate is 0. And this is our starting point. When we graph, or this is like the intersection of the equator here, this would have been the equator, and then this would be like the prime meridian, right? So that would be the intersection. All right, so label each axis. Moving forward, label each axis and label the values here of x and y. So here, if we're going to the right, that represents all the x values that are positive, and then we denote that with x and a positive at the top. That is a notation. Here up, y is positive, so y is gonna be positive here. Let me pause this, right? And so on this side, let me just go back. So again, here you have anything that's going to the right, x is positive. So we denote that with x, and then kind of treat this like a exponent. So that means positive. That's just a notation we got to get used to. Here, if we're going up, that represents everything where y is positive. So we just denote that as y with a plus, like an exponent. On the left side here, if we keep going to the left, we keep going towards a negative. So x is negative, and we denote that as x is negative. I'm looking ahead to this with this arrow. So here, if that y is positive, going down y is negative, and I would denote this was y with y is negative. Remember, the vertical line is the y-axis, the horizontal line is the x-axis. As I said earlier, right, if y is negative when it's going down, then this is, we write down y negative here, and then I'm just denoting the origin, the starting point here, one more time. Now here, we're labeling the quadrants, right? The quadrants there's 4 of them. One, you start here, this is 2, that's 3, and that's 4. And then I don't know why I wrote this last arrow here. So I'm writing down, this is quadrant 1. And we tend to use Roman numeral numbers to denote the quadrant because, the coordinates will be in Arabic numbers, so we will try to use Roman numerals. We give them some props, the Romans, for what they did. So this is quadrant 2. Again, it starts on the top right. This is quadrant 2, so that's counterclockwise, meaning the opposite of an analog clock. Then you have quadrant 3, and you continue with that rotation, and that's going to be quadrant 4 here. And that's it. That's really the only thing that you need to know regarding the quadrants. These are the locations, right? Remember that this is the x-axis, the horizontal axis, and then that's the y-axis there. Now here, I wanted you to recall a couple of things. So now this is the end of the introduction to the Cartesian Coordinate Plane. So label each, oops, here, mistypo. Label each the x and y values for each quadrant. It's okay. I should remove that each here. That's okay. So we're gonna recall, right? What are the values? So we know these as quadrants. Quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. But in quadrant 1, we need to know what the values of x and y are. So let's continue the video and let me explain. I'll pause it. So notice I labeled 1, 2, 3, and that keeps going, right? This is -1, -2, -3, right? And what I'm trying to show you here is that if you keep going to the right, x is always going to get bigger, but it's always positive. Remember, that's 0, 0. And if you keep going to the left, all the values of that, x is negative. So we did this earlier where, if you go to the right, you get x is positive. If you go to the left, then x is negative. And here I'm starting to go up, so that's when the y is positive. And then as you go down, right, keep going down, y is negative. So let me continue this writing. Now that tells us what type of values we're going to have for the x and y in here, right? Since here everything is positive, right? And meaning the x values are positive and the y values are positive, so the x value and y value here will all be positive. So I'm denoting the x and the y, and then I'm telling you that it's x is positive here. Y is positive, x is positive as well, right? On quadrant 2 here, right, the x values are negative, right? So then I'm going to put a negative here. So I'm just trying to show you, okay, you can actually figure out what quadrant a point is depending on the values of their x's and y's. So here the y values are positive, the x values will be negative. And we'll just continue with that. Right here, both are negative, right? All the x values are negative, all the y values are negative. Here, all the x values are positive, and all the y values are negative. So I'm just trying to show you how it all kind of relates to each other, right? So let me finish writing these so that I can explain it. Right, now, if you notice in quadrant 1, the x values and the y values are all going to be positive. In quadrant 2, the x values are going to be negative, y values are going to be positive. In quadrant 3, the x and y values are both going to be negative. And in quadrant 4, the x values are positive, the y values will be negative. And 0, 0 is still there. That's still the origin. We call this north, south, east, west. So this all relates to each other, and we're hoping that it will connect as you learn a little bit more and get more familiar with this.